Yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
And I used to read about business leaders, other eminent people, and they were very, very impactful. They were very impressive. But I used to find all of you very impressive as well in terms of the kind of work you were doing. And that curiosity remained for several years. And I knew that it's a heavy lifting if and when I embark upon that journey. So I waited till I retired way back in 2015. And then I said, this is the time to do this heavy lifting. And I approached
Anil, we can't hear.
At the back, not there. But now it's done. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
The connection had become loose from there. Jara usko dhyan rakhna. Okay.
all right, so let's hope we get it right now.
Yeah, it's right.
So Professor Rao took his weekend days and he basically allowed me to indulge with my passion. And he said, looks like you seem to be very keen on doing this. And Indra, you're sitting there. I recall in your class with the late Professor Pulingar, you used to talk about the children of two cultures. There was a book in our class called Career Choice and Identity, where you've taken a deep dive about the MBA students in IIM Ahmedabad. And I recall those early days, which was also very impactful. And in fact, credit to that class at that time, both Indra, yourself and Professor Pulingar, that I discovered myself as to who I was and who I wanted to be. So I owe to you, Indra, and your being present here today is a special meaning for me. Thank you for being there.
The book was called Profiles in Identity.
Profiles in Identity. Profiles in Identity. So I recall that book as well. And so all of these were playing in my mind over the years, and I'm so happy and so overwhelmed that over the years, I was able to reach out to people like yourself, and you allowed me the luxury of time, and you were candid to share your stories that lasted over several meetings, several hours, almost 5-6 hours. Most of those meetings were in person and some on Zoom call, thanks to COVID. And one of the person, KK Sinha, is no more. I remember meeting him when he was traveling to US and I was also traveling to US. So I met him in San Francisco. He gave me time there and supplemented that by more meetings here back in Bombay. And I really feel wherever he is, he should be very happy that he's remembered in this book. And there is a chapter on him as well, the kind of person that he was. And I was equally impacted by the book which Warren Bennis and Robert Thomas wrote on Crucible of Leadership. Crucible, as you know, is the melting pot through which you go. And when you go through it, you don't realize what you're going through. These may be everyday experiences of life, up and down, but it's only in retrospect you realize how that event has been so impactful and how those impactful moments shape your character and the person you become. So this book is all about deep diving into the lives of 30 HR leaders as to what kind of early childhood they had, what kind of influencing parents did, what kind of influencing their teachers and schools and academic institutions that they went through, they did, what kind of influencing they experienced in their corporate career, the first job, the setbacks in life, the bosses, the mentors, the well-wishers, all of those, even professional forums. I mentioned a number of times National HRD Network, what impact that has had in our becoming who we have become. So tracing these moments of inflections and what choices we had in front of us in those moments of inflections, and what choices did we make to become who we have become. That is the journey that the book presents. We initially had a much longer list. We had almost 70 people. Professor Rao and myself, we brainstormed sitting in his office, 70 names. And we said, that's a long list we can't deal with. So we applied some criteria. You may equally consider that as our biases, which may have creeped in. But then we went down to 32. Out of 32, one person, when we presented him the draft, he said, wow, did I say all this? This is very private. This is going to go to public. I said, you shared all this. He says, no, then I would rather opt out. So he chose to opt out. And another person, she said, actually, I want to write a book myself. And therefore, for now, I think I would better not share because we'll be covering much the same ground. So she opted out. So 30 of us remained in the book. And we are mindful that while 30 are covered in the book, there are perhaps many 30 and maybe hundreds who are out there who are very impactful leaders on their own right. And they deserve to be documented in terms of what they have done in life and how they have evolved as a leader. I remember in your board meeting, you were discussing about how leaders are made. So I equally hope that many more such books are written, not just about the political leaders or public figures who are business leaders, but about people who are CXOs. They may be head of marketing function, they may be SBU heads, they may be HR heads, finance heads. All of these people, their lives are equally inspiring. But let me not get carried away, as I do tend to get carried away, and take a pause, but invite people who really made the book. I'm but only a nominal author. The real people who are there in the book are sitting in front of you. So we would try to dive into some of the snippets of their lives, which are featured in the book through a conversation. And I see prominently written Happy Teachers Day. And yesterday only was the Teachers Day. So let's just start with reminiscing how we have been impacted by teachers. And I recall, where is Dr. Balwant? So Ashok, you mentioning about how you adopted the profession that you did go in terms of chemistry in particular. And that's a subject which I could not stand. I was very good with physics and mathematics. But chemistry, I was a big zero. But Ashok was very eloquent about how he fell in love with chemistry. So I would urge you, Ashok, to share how did you get impacted?
Thank you, Arvind. Two things I relate very much with this. One is the crucible. Right. I've used crucible in our practicals for a long time.
Right.
And crucible is really the small, porcelain vessel, right, which is heated to a very high temperature. So it really cooks. And there are many chemical reactions that take place. And I see a relation there that you've really used this so effectively. In all people's life, there is a crucible, there is a testing time there. So these are the ones which are very effective. We had our teacher, Professor Tiara from Kerala. He would come and teach us chemistry. he would never start from anything related to chemistry. He'll start from a story. And slowly he'll build up story. For example, I still remember, he said that there was a person who used to show snakes and how snakes, and shows different tricks of the snake. And once that snake was trying to bite its own tail. At that point in time, there was a person known as Kekule who saw it, went home, and next day he came up with the new structure, with the whole world was working on aromatics, that it has a cyclic structure. That was a revolution for the first time to really suggest a cyclic thing. So Professor Tiara, I can never forget, he would start with this and create such an intense, link with the chemistry there. And I can only say that I had no other subject in mind that time but to pursue chemistry.
Yeah, thank you. So just imagine the entire life journey was shaped by that one person who was teaching chemistry in a certain way. And there are a number of you who are teachers in the board meeting, equally you are participating. So you have that kind of opportunity to really impact lives. I remember, Pratik, you were talking about the academic environment in XLRI, coming from where you were, the rustic Bihar, and the kind of people that you met in XLRI and the professors you met. You want to talk, and also at one particular time you were to be punished, but instead of being punished, you were actually acknowledged.
Yeah, maybe say it all in the public because anyway it's in the book. Yeah, but I think it's not only in Excel, but even earlier in school, the self-belief or your teachers having more belief in you, it goes a long way in making you push yourself harder. And the school years were patchy. In some subjects you were really good, and in some subjects you struggled. And at times you used to think that maybe it's time to actually just look at something else. And in those moments, I recall very clearly, had it not been for the insistence of many teachers who made you believe that, look, you still the course and we are there to actually help you along, I guess the path I would have taken might have been a little different. Now and in Excel also was no different because it was a very different peer group and it weighed on you initially. But I think the incident which you and I will discuss, and it finds a mention in the book, is an interesting one. In the early days in Excel, when we were in first year, so there was a gathering and which was also being addressed by our Dairo there. And it so happened that the crowd was little, I would say raucous, for lack of a different word. And we went a little over the top, and it didn't go down too well with the authorities and others. And finally, Dairo was very upset. So he went up and he said that, look, what happened was very unlike Excel. So I would like you all to own up, people who indulged in it. And it was pretty much an audience like this, right? And all of them kept quiet. I remember there were 3 of us who raised a hand, right? And said that, look, we own it up, and something which we did, we should not. He says, come to our room, come to his room, that is. And as I was walking to his room, all kinds of thoughts were kind of racing in my mind. What could be the consequence? We were still in the first year. Would it lead to suspension? Would it lead to anything else? What will I go and actually tell my parents and all that? So long story short, when I went in, he first of all said, look, whatever happened should not have happened, but I compliment you guys for having the gumption and courage to own it up, unlike all your others, right? And in that brief moment, there was a life lesson which was learned. Many a times when you own up your mistake, you will find that the person on the other side is a lot more forgiving. And then it tells you something not to be able to repeat again. And had his own approach been different, perhaps if there was another occasion in life where I had an opportunity to similarly own up, I would have actually thought twice, which didn't happen.
Yeah.
Well said. Well said.
So it's not just the teachers, but even the way institute is run. That shaped your belief in transparency and candid conversations as opposed to hiding and saving your skin. So formation of character deeply impacted by the way institute is run. And of course, if I pass on the mic to all the people present here, they would have stories to tell, then we'll be here all night. So let me go further to the first job, and many of you would move into your first job. And Dwarka, I remember you talking about 10,000 people factory in which you were paratroop in Calcutta.
Yes. Thank you, Arvind. Before I start being a Teacher's Day, I need to acknowledge the presence of Ms. Nohoria, who was one of my first bosses when I started my career as a management trainee this year. I never thought that I will join the management programs. I want to become a lawyer.
Yeah.
And that is the tradition of the family. But at some stage, I was felt fascinated, if I can say. I moved on. I'm lucky to get into management training scheme of the DCM. I think the one experience I want to tell, especially for youngsters, which I realized at a very young age, the first job which impressed me, I had the opportunity to work for some time in the chairman's office, Dr. Sharath Ramji, late Sharath Ramji. I think the way I worked with him, then it was my confirmation. He called me and gave the letter, gave the feedback, and there was a senior person who was sitting there. He said, now your luck starts now. I'm sending you to Lucknow. Okay. This is the first tough assignment. I'm a South Indian. I was not very familiar with Hindi. I need to go and handle some dealers association and all that. But he said, you understand the business, you will understand it. I tell you, that is the word which is said it to me in 72 after my confirmation. 50 years back later, if I said what I've learned, how you can inspire, regardless of your position, whether you are a chairman or you are somebody else, you can relate to Mali to Malik. That is one thing, which touched my chords. And when I came back, the person who was sitting, Ms. Jagdish Monga was there. He said, I wanted Dwarka Prasad to stay in Delhi. I was to go to Calcutta. He said, he's not Dwarka Prasad, he's Dwarka Nath. That was the chairman's remark. What it means is how particular it is. I was only a management trainee and he was the chairman of the company. But that is the touch which you can do, what I call psychic income. Everything need not be in positions, titles and all that, which makes you feel very, very nice and inspire. You will inspire others also to do the same way. Just to sum it up, Arvind, I think, my 51 years experience, I think what you and TV have done is something, which will hold on forever. I can keep on telling to my son and daughter, now it's grandchildren, maybe tomorrow to great children to read it, which I said I need to acknowledge it. It's very rare. A fellow contemporary professional talk about the other leaders.
Yes.
Everyone wants to talk about themselves, write about themselves, but not to talk about. And secondly, to bring somebody who's an expertise, serial author, what you call, to write and help you is something also which speaks very high. And to bring in Anil to create this platform is also fantastic.
Thank you.
I feel elated in the presence of such a very humble guy, but that's the great life. Thank you.
But the first job is first job, and you always remember. And I'm just wondering, Rajiv, if you recall, you told me about your first job. You had bluest of the blue chip job in the country, the Tata Administrative Service, but yet you were one unhappy man.
I was very unhappy in Bombay because I'd gone from Lutyens, Delhi, and it was raining and there was concrete and I had to travel in a bus and I was staying as a paying guest and my landlord threw me out one day when it was raining. So I was very unhappy. But I was clear in my mind that if I stay on in the TAS, it will only be if I got one posting as my first posting. executive assistant to Rusi Modi, managing director of Tata Steel, posted in Jamshedpur. So, and I was lucky, Rusi Modi hated TAS people. He had his own Modi administrative service. But I think he liked my beard probably, and he agreed to that job. So what did I learn from that, from Rusi Modi? I won't take very long. Number one was you can create magic in every moment. With Rusi Modi, every interaction, every moment was magic. He could just create some huge excitement, and at least on me, I almost hero worship that man. He taught me to have the courage to be myself, even if it meant creating problems for myself. But he gave me that courage. And last, you learn by doing and not by observing and reading. So these were the three learnings.
Yeah, wonderful. On my left is Dr. Akhil Basrai from XLRI. And the first job he lands up in Blue Star. And what was he doing?
Thank you, Arvind, and thank you, Anil, for having us all here. The first job when you pass out from an institute, whether it is Soil or Excel, is supposed to be giving us an impression that I'm an MBA, and if you happen to be also a gold medalist, then you get a bigger head and become arrogant intellectually. And my job was, and this is pre-computer days, we have filing system called Kalamazoo was an employee record system, Noria sir, you'll remember, where all the employees' data was captured in small cards, which ought to be handwritten. And my boss told me that your job is to, first thing I found, they gave me a room on the first day management training, which I thought was my entitlement. And thank God. And then this filing cabinet was brought in with employees' files. And I was told to fill up those records of employees. I thought, okay, it's part of induction, so maybe 1-2 days I should do this work. And then I kept on doing it, and he asked me how many done. So I gave him a number. 3 days later, he asked me how many done, and numbers had gone down. So he said, that's very good. And I was surprised that if numbers are going down, the cards are filled, how come I'm getting complimented? Maybe he's just trying to make me feel nice. And he continued for 2 weeks. And I was really angry, if not frustrated, that this is the way an MBA cannot be used for this clerical work. So, of course, I didn't have the courage what Rajubhai had to tell him that way, but he could understand my frustration. He didn't give up. So I filled out quite a lot of cards for I think 2 to 3 months. Until then, I had not gone for a single meeting with employees or union. I was a personnel officer training. Those were not HR days, those were personnel days. But one advantage of it that I realized, I told you, shared with you, that when I met the first time all these people, I knew their background like an X-ray. Who was a troublemaker, who had gone through what. And it was like almost a premonition to meet them and know them much more than what they thought I knew about them. And that is the time I realized the value of doing work, which very rightly said, doing it on your knees and learning with your hands getting dirty. And part of that, my first Gherao, I don't think this generation will know the word Gherao is. Gherao was the agitation movement where management were put in a closed place, hours together. My first Gherao was at 23 and a half. And at 23 and a half, all of us are like Amitabh Bachchan, angry young man. We can change the world. And one lesson that I learned, I lost the meaning of one word during that period of 5.5 hours. I lost the meaning of the word fear. When you have faith in the people you work with, you're not afraid of them harming you. And surprisingly, in an intimidating situation of being locked up for 5.5 hours without electricity, without telephone, people shouting literally a few feet away from you, to intimidate you and maintain your cool, you actually realize there is something inside you which comes up and gets awake. A lot of learning. If you are just sensitive to yourself and being authentic, you learn a lot from your own self and your strength comes to surface.
Yeah. That's the meaning you made out of work, which was somewhat mundane, inconsequential. But with a hindsight, you recognized the meaning and the learning out of that. And Anil, he was a sought after man in his early days at Tata Motors itself. He was interviewing, even as a young entrant to Tata Motors, interviewing IIT and IIM students for his R&D. And I would request Anil to share his experience of those days.
So Mr. Guruda was the director R&D, and he assigned me an office next to him because Mr. Arun Maira was there earlier. And V.S. Mahesh, my immediate boss, told me you will head HR function for these two divisions, R&D and machine tool division. There were 1,500 engineers there. And it was fascinating. Mr. Gurudat, I was only 20 and a half. I was 21 years old. Mr. Gurudat said, I like the way you ask questions in the interviews, and I want to sit and learn interviewing from you. Mr. Gurudat, director R&D, 48-year-old man, PhD from one of the top universities, says, I want to learn from this young man how to ask questions. And deputy director R&D we are selecting, and people who have worked with Nobel laureates. I remember a person who has worked with Dr. Horlock in Imperial College London, was a candidate who had applied. And he's telling me now, Anil, you begin by asking the question. So I was fascinated. And I was just given an opportunity to just ask those questions. And I think it's credit goes to leaders like Gurudat, that in a young person, they are seeing something which even the person is not aware of it. And I joined iShare at 23 and a half to head HR, and I fall sick. I'm down in bed for 40 days, and Mr. Vikram Lal comes to my house 10 times. He's a shareholder. In 40 days, he visited my house 10 times to see which professional, which is treated like that. And Mr. Subodh Bhargav, my boss, whom I became very fond of later, he was a director of projects. He was looking for manpower. He didn't know that I was sick. So he went and complained to Mr. Lal that I don't know who this new HR person is. That is, the interviews have not been organized for the interviews. Perhaps Subodh was not informed correctly. Mr. Vikram Lal told him, Anil is rejoining the company tomorrow. Well, let's have a meeting with him. And in my presence, he told Subodh, will you please bring to the notice of Anil what you were telling me? Now, Subodh Bhargav, of course, repeated that I didn't know that what was happening. And I said, of course, I had arranged all the jobs, the interviews were about to take place. But I learned a very important lesson. Mr. Subodh Bhargav was the next in line in the company after Mr. Lal, an amazing leader. But Mr. Vikram Lal is telling him to repeat so that in his presence, a clarification could take place. Right. The reason I'm saying this is that's how the iShare culture was built. And I would say to the credit of Mr. Subodh Bhargav, he is easily one of the finest people leaders I've ever worked with in my life. He was never taken aback that why Mr. Lal is asking this question in the young person's presence. He acknowledged that he didn't know. And later on, the role that he played in my life along with Mr. Lal, I would say Mr. Subodh Bhargav was easily, if Vikram Lal was the spiritual presence in iShare, Subodh was the most virtuous role model in the way he led himself and his relationships. So I was very fortunate to work for people. And then Mr. Noria. I think I would describe Mr. Noria as the fourth most important person in my life, after my parents and my spiritual teacher and after Mr. Vikram Lal. The way I have learned from Mr. Noria every day, every moment in his presence is very special. And I just want to feel, I'm very honored that he's sitting here today. And that is his
Yeah. And public sector is yet another world of its own. And Ashok had first-hand experience when he first joined ONGC, complete culture shock, and best to hear from Ashok himself.
Yeah, so after my passing out from IIT Delhi, I worked for a short time with DCM, Lakhs at that time. And we had one person from that management services working with us. And that was a very vibrant way of working. We never bothered about the timelines. And for those who really, don't take the timings very seriously, and always, particularly the public sector, they complain. That time we used to punch our card. 9 o'clock in the morning was the last day. If you're permitted 5 minutes late. So 9:05, 3 times, no questions asked. But if it is 9:06, you may be asked by the divisional section as to why you were late. Similarly, 5:30 you have to punch. If you go before that, then you'll be asked for that. So from that culture, I joined ONGC, and it was again R&D institute in Dehradun. So as normal, I would reach there around 9 o'clock, and everything was closed. And I had to search for that who will open the labs there. So for a few days, I realized that here the timings are different. So I asked that fellow, that attendant, that give me the keys. I will open it myself. So I'll come 9:30, I'll open all these things and put on some equipment on and all. But there was no supporting staff coming at that time. The senior officers, the boss would come around 11 o'clock, 11:15, and there would be a round of tea conversation. And then before lunch, he would make a round to labs. So, okay, what's going on and all. And then it's a lunchtime. So the lunchtime, which used to be half an hour, would always extend to an hour or more. And then you need to take rest also after food, So they'll come back around 3 o'clock. Again, it's a time for tea. And you have a round of tea with some snacks and all. Then take a final round to the labs. And 4:30 or so, you can start thinking of wrapping it up. So it was a different kind of thing. And I realized that how one is going to work in this. But in this environment also, there were tremendous leadership there. One of my senior people would come around 4:30, 5 o'clock and initiate some discussion, create interest. And we would end up discussing for 1.5, 2 hours time. And we were the last to leave that. And that's how I realized that even in this different environment, there are leaders who matter, who really drive these organizations. So from that time to nowadays, the present ONGC, my organization, we call it a modern MNC PSU now,
Yes, of course.
is a tremendous change, a transition has taken place entirely because of certain people who have really changed the overall. But it was a change for me, which I was not sure whether I'll continue here. After 2-3 months, in fact, my father was very worried because I wouldn't talk at home. I was debating with myself, I've made a mistake of coming here. But then slowly, I realized that there's much more to do here. There's a lot of potential here to do that. And that's how we worked on that. But a tremendous change.
Yeah. And Ashok Palyan himself was one of the transformational leader. He moved from a business role to human resource role. And for how many years you were there in human resource role?
I was actually in exploration for oil and gas for about 27, 28 years. And then there was a change where the CEO came, a new CEO, and he visited I was posted at Kolkata that time. And 4 or 5 times he visited, usual review by any CEO. But I didn't know that he was observing me. And then the 4th visit, I came to know that there is a plan to shift me to HR. And very frankly, I must say that I was very angry. And I told him, I said, I'll ask the CEO. So next time when he came, I asked him, sir, I want to talk to you. He said, okay, come along. And he said, what? Tell me. I said, I've heard that I've been shifted to HR. Am I not doing good work? That was the kind of impression of that. And then, this is the kind of leader who can inspire you and change your thinking. And he said that I've been looking for an HR person because this organization, if it has to grow and become an international organization, a competitive environment, successful organization, then HR platform would only transform it. And I've been looking for a person. There are many people who have been suggested to me. but I feel you could drive it. Then he said, sir, I said, I'm not confident. I feel little hesitant on that. He said, no, I am confident. I said, okay, I agree, sir. But in case I fail, my condition, you put me back here on this. So he agreed on that, and that's how I changed over. But many things you never know. You're taking decisions which are guided by certain principles. Right. And I think HR, everybody has some HR, facets and aspects in any decision making.
Yeah. So that's great. And that's very much documented in the book itself, because you were very kind enough to share that story with me. And before we come to final wrap up messages from each one of you, I would like to draw Prateek, because after years of human resource function under very demanding bosses like Vivek Paul and Asim Premji himself, is now moved to a position of a chief executive officer for infrastructure and engineering services, and he's globalized that business and moved up the revenues and profit. So how did you feel coming to completely unknown territory and troubled water, so to say?
So I mean, demanding bosses are also very fair bosses, right? And when I was, even before I moved into business role, when I was moving into the corporate HR leadership role, I was all of 35. And I had my own concerns because at least in my own perception, that role at a corporate HR leadership role is typically played by people a few years before retirement, and I was all of 35. So I went up to Mr. Premji and said that, look, I don't want to retire from this role. He said, so he looked at me and said, look, I would be very disappointed if you actually retire from this role. So you figure out what you want to do. So I said, look, I want to actually play a business role. And he says, okay, you have all the opportunities. So long story short, Arvind, I mean, that my initial thought was that it will take about 6 years, 5 years, 6 years, I'll do this role and then move on. But for a variety of internal reasons, I had to actually stay on because there were a lot of organization shifts and changes are happening, and I needed to continue. But to be fair to my manager, Mr. Premji, he came back at the right time and said that, look, here is this role, and would you consider? And I grabbed it with both my hands. And so one thing I must tell you is that as much as I thought I was prepared for the role, because you were sitting in those reviews and you know the rhythm of that business and how it actually works. And the nature of the corporate role is such that you're not only in HR. I mean, you get exposed to a whole lot of other areas. So you feel that you're prepared, but little do you realize how little you know till you actually step into the role. And you find that you are so grossly underprepared, right? And at that point in time, I think it's important to us as, and this is my own learning, I mean, you have to be able to be honest with your vulnerability, that you don't know enough, right? And the people who really taught me in those early days were my team members, and I had inherited a wonderful set of team with me. I was not an engineer, I was being put in charge, and I wanted to understand why you would actually do that, because it could actually flip and go the other way, right? Either for me or for the organization. And the people who taught me were my team. And believe me, when I say this, that my initial days were actually spent on the shop floors learning for the supervisors and the workers who were there on the shop floor. And the learning for me has been that, look, if you have the humility to accept that you don't know enough, and actually humbleness to learn from whoever can actually teach you, it will go a long way in terms of preparing you for a lifelong journey of learning. And yes, and I actually made the switch over. I had the same initial imposter syndrome that, have I actually landed up, which is undeserving. But then you also realize that someone who actually entrusted you with that has a lot more confidence in you than perhaps at that stage you have in yourself.
Right.
Right. And that provides a different kind of fillip and motivation for you not to let down the person. So, and I can say that now it's been a long, almost 12 years I've been as a part of that role. And it's been the most thrilling, most exciting, and the most, I would say, enriching from a learning standpoint, this journey.
Yeah. In fact, people around here, they have been on both sides of the lines, from the human resource to the business role, and from business role to the HR role. But more about that in the book itself. But I would just pass the mic around to each one of you to share your parting thoughts and message for the students in particular. So Anil, from you.
I want to just honor my spiritual teacher and my parents for teaching that the entire meaning of education is to learn, first of all, love for learning. Second, love for God. And third, love for service. These are the three things I learned in my life from my spiritual teacher and my parents. If you get these three aspects of love, then you will rise in love. Our Gurudev always said, you don't fall in love, you rise in love. That's what this was about. That's what I mean.
Well, I think I would only say that believe in yourself. That's one thing. And once you have that belief, you would be able to execute any difficult situation. Number two, normally people try to shy away from difficult situations or difficult places, difficult work. In my opinion, most difficult situations, difficult work give you the highest opportunity to really have high performance and showcase your capabilities. So never shy away from difficult situations. And hard work always pays at the end of the day. So keep it in mind.
But I'll share my own way of looking at it. What has helped, I think, two qualities that God has been kind. One, of course, is humility. If we don't practice and feel humble, not just show humbleness, but feel humble, that opens up a lot of avenues to learn from anybody who comes, whether it's your gardener, whether it's your youngster to you, whether seniors, it has no boundary. And second, I find, and I hope I continue, and you referred to it earlier, is to have a curiosity of a child. Keep learning, keep opening things, keep breaking things, and what makes it work. And sometimes breaking something is more fun in corporate world than creating, because when you break something, you recreate something better, because that puts more onus on you to change the world rather than just maintain the world.
Thank you.
Three. Number one, always be led by purpose. Two, if there is failure, embrace it and learn from it. Three, never deviate from the path of Satya, Prem, and Seva. Satya is to speak the truth. Prem is to be compassionate. And Seva, of course, is to be of service to others. Thank you.
I have not changed my name. I have not changed my profession. I have not changed the company, but my company's name has changed 5 times. In 40 years, I work with GlaxoSmithKline, whatever the name is called. I think one message I want to give from my learnings is that you can plan many things, you can visualize many things, you want to have a vision and all that, but you need to be aware of what is the circumstances on which you are. The ecosystem is very important. How did it happen? Because mergers and acquisitions. There are some within your limits, some of them is not your control. I think the ability to adopt and adapt to the current situations and think about the future is very important. Don't go in a particular route. I think Arvind asked me, I said, I worked in Indian companies, then I worked in multinational for many years, more than 3 decades. Again, I worked in Indian group for 14 years. I had no problem because it's a myth to say only work in multinationals Again, it's a myth to say only to work in Indian company. All are equally good as long as you adapt to the situation. So my suggestion is have some goals, but keep moving those goals depending on the ecosystem.
I reflect on my own life and career journey, Arvind, and I keep asking myself, are there things which I should have done more, right? And those are not regrets, but just my wish. If I had actually just done more of that, maybe I would have still grown in terms of who I am, in terms of my own learning. And according to me, there are three things which come to the surface. One, read more, travel more, and third, which to me is equally important, is question more. Question. Yeah. So yeah.
And for me, discovering the stories of the 30 leaders meant a special gift. And I discovered that there's a leader in each one of us. All of you, if you put your hand on the heart, you will find there's a leader within you as well. And what these 30 leaders have demonstrated, that they could invoke that leadership, whether that was a difficult moment, difficult bosses, unknown assignments, they invoked that leadership and they unleashed their inner power to deal with the situation. And they had humility to learn from that situation and continue to grow, evolve, and they're continuing to evolve. So my appeal to you would be to invoke your leader within you in all situations and have the humility to learn from you. And I think Anil mentioned about love of learning. That is so powerful, and more so in the world that we live today, which is going to constantly change. So we have the challenge of constantly learning from all the time. So my best wishes. And now I'd like to invite all of you to unwrap the book we've been talking about. So how do you want to do that?
Noria ji, will you come and present the books to us? And Indira. I will request Dr. Indira Parekh and Mr. Noria to do the honors.
Please.
Aye. Ashok ji. Yes, sir. 1 minute. Yes, sir. Thank you.
So now is the time to open it?
Yes, yes.
Okay. You got it?
Nice.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Sir, I would like, thank you.
Thank you.
I remember the incident about 5-6 of you getting into become a legend in Excel. Excel market.
Those stories are still told.
Satya Prem or Seva? Yes.
So we can donate to the library of soil.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Which may be better.
Correct.
That's absolutely.
No.
I want to
Congratulations, Arvind.
Thank you so much.
What's our level?
I missed it twice.
Almost 40 years.
That's right.
I've always been hearing about you. Played.
Arvind signing off.
Yeah, thank you, Ashok. Just a vote.
I see you, Anil. Bye.
Manjula is proposing
I
a
was
vote of
surprised
thanks.
because he sent a mail to me. Said, welcome.
Just a vote of thanks.
I joined ISL as a student member and
Arvind, vote of thanks. Okay, Mira, just a vote of thanks.
Good evening, everyone. I'm not going to take too much of your time. We had a very, very long day, very, very refreshing, very, a day where we learned so much from all the academicians, from all the people from the industry. It has been a fantastic day of a great learning curve for the students also, where they had interacted with the industry professionals. So thank you very much. And I, from my bottom of my heart, I personally want to thank Anil sir for the kind of, exposure we all had today as faculty members and as students. So thank you very much. And a big round of thanks to all the students. You have been a fantastic audience. Thank you so much. Thanks to all the people who have joined us
And you have
online.
samosa to students.
Yes, there are samosas for everybody. Thank you so much.
Samosas outside, come on.
Anil, so you're saying, this can actually go to the soil library
Those books we have bought for the library.
already.
Yes. Those are over and above. I have also bought 10 more books in addition to these.
Okay.
But if you want to give it to
So
them,
that is what they want to do.
they want to do that. Then you please sign.
Okay.